Welcome to our online class for our vocabulary content. So Heidi's presentation will be linked and on the discussion board with her activities, so please be sure and check that out. Also, I passed out in class the McAndrews vocabulary chapter that has strategies and assessments in addition to what we're going to present on this recorded webinar. So please make sure you're checking that out, and whatever questions you have you can bring to class or post on the discussion board. So the first thing we're going to do is walk through Maranzano's 6 steps to build academic vocabulary. This is based on a book that was published quite a while back called Building Academic Vocabulary. It's a very inexpensive book, might be a great one to add to your library. So what he says in the introduction of this book is that we know that vocabulary has a profound effect on comprehension. Kids have to understand the words before they can really understand the information in the article, so it kind of makes sense. And we also know that systematic instruction is really important, especially for kids who come from academically disadvantaged backgrounds. And that can mean a host of students, not just low SES, but also maybe kids who haven't had experiences that others have had, kids who have had traumatic experiences. There's just a whole host of kids to consider when we look at academically disadvantaged backgrounds. So the first thing he talks about is creating a list, and we really have to determine a reasonable number for terms to teach during the school year. So the example he gives is that if we do a new term in each of the 4 subject areas, 1 term per week for 30 weeks, that's about 120 terms. We know through working memory research that 6 to 8 terms a week is about all a student can learn efficiently in order to get to the application stage of vocabulary. So knowing that, we want to select our terms very carefully and make sure that the terms we're selecting are more of those tier 2 vocabulary terms, and we've talked about that a little bit in class, those that go across content areas, or those that are really important for those critical understandings for the year, for that subject matter for that year. Terms can be selected from your curriculum. A lot of districts have vocab for each unit, and that's a part of their curriculum. It can be taken from the state or national standards, and then there are also lots of prepared lists around that can be used for targeting for teaching. It used to be, and I haven't seen it lately, but the MAP test and the EOC tests had vocabulary list, and so if you're in, those subject areas, it would be good to use those vocabulary terms. So basically, the Maranzano strategy uses a 6-step format, and in a nutshell, we're going to provide the description and an explanation and examples of the new term. Students are going to restate that in their own words and put it in a notebook. They're going to construct some type of non-linguistic representation. They're going to engage in activities in order to build their knowledge. They're going to be discussing terms and then using games to interact with the terms for the application piece. So we're going to walk through each one of those steps a little more in depth. So the first being provide a description. So we're going to determine what do they already know about this particular term. And what misconceptions might they have that we need to clarify. And we're going to kind of build on that initial understanding. And some ways you can do that is through a field trip, through guest speakers, through stories, through videos, investigations, current events, think alouds, clip art, or pictures. But the main thing is you do not want to provide a definition yet or have them look it up in the dictionary. This is just talking about their experiences with words and giving them some implicit experiences that they can help determine the meaning of that word. So for example, this picture that I have on here, the word we're going to use throughout is possession. And so possession in a basketball sense is which team has possession of the ball. And so that might be a piece of clip art that we used for that word possession. Next, students are then going to restate that definition in their own words. At this point, it doesn't need to be comprehensive, but it should show a general understanding. We're going to be building throughout this process their knowledge of the word. So just that basic definition where they have a basic understanding. And then if they're struggling with doing that, give them more examples. Have them talk about the word. You can even move on to step 3 and then come back to step 2. We should always be revisiting this definition throughout this whole process as their knowledge of this vocabulary word or words deepens. So here is an example. If you're in possession of something, you have it because you got it or because it's yours. That came straight from one of my students' texts. Sounds very student-y, doesn't it? Step 3. They're going to construct a picture or some type of graphic presentation because this gives them that non-linguistic meaning for this term. For students who feel they can't draw, you can model it and provide examples of other students' drawings, and students definitely at first could work together on this. They can also search for clip art that they could use to represent that word. And for students who tend to overdraw, who get very detailed, we need to model that quick draw and show the difference between drawing and a sketch. This should be something that's done in 3 to 4, 5 at the most minutes. It should not take that long. And for some of those more abstract terms that it's hard to find a representation for, definitely check the internet. Go on Images, Google Images or Bing Images, and search that word because oftentimes there'll be some kind of graphic representation that comes up with it. And then they can also dramatize the word. So here is my stick figure and he is in possession of the sword. We had been reading some of Arthurian legends and things like that. So we were talking about the sword and stone. So that's one of the reasons why we used this graphic. Step 4 is where they're really going to engage in different activities that utilize the vocab. So this is going to help them deepen their understanding because they're going to have more experiences with the term. And we need to make sure that they're being engaged explicitly in the vocab. So as they participate, time should be allowed to add or revise to the understanding of the term. So in both steps 3 and 4, always going back to that step 2 definition that they provided and adding to it or clarifying it or making it a deeper meaning. So I handed out a list of different review activities of different games and activities that they could use in order to meet this step. So take a look at those. For step 5, you're going to have time to talk about the term with each other. So making sure we know that social interaction piece definitely strengthens the pathways in the brain and especially deepens our understanding. So this could be very informal or formal. So an example would be a think, pair, share. And then provide an opportunity for students to revise and make addition to their understandings of the term even at this point. So even though we feel like we're towards the end of the lessons in dealing with this, we want to make sure that students still have that opportunity to go back and deepen it. Step 6 is games. And so we know games are one of the most underutilized instructional tools. And it also will help with the application piece and keeping those terms in front of student thinking. And again, that handout in class provided some different activities and some different games. But memory, where they're matching pictures with words or definitions with words or all three, go fish, those types of things that kids really enjoy doing, and they're kind of mindless activities, but yet again they're gathering that deeper meaning and applying those concepts. The other piece is that you have to think about scheduling the time for instruction. So you want to block out that time for 1 through 3, especially with that direct instruction, and then you need to kind of decide how often are you going to do 4, 5, and 6. Is it once a week? Is it going to be a couple times a week? Maybe more at the beginning, less at the end, or maybe you're going to do 4 on this day and 6 on this day, or 5 on this day. Kind of depending on your schedule. Definitely realize that as kids are learning the 6-step process, it's going to take them a little time initially to understand just the process, and it's going to get faster as the year goes on because that's your routine, and then you're just embedding new content into it. You also want to be monitoring for accuracy. So whenever they're working in their notebooks or they're working on an activity or playing a game or having a discussion, make sure you're walking around the room and listening and looking at their work. Check their notebooks for clarity and accuracy, and then listen for those confusions and misconceptions and make sure everybody's on the same page with the term and what it means. So now, one of the activities you're going to do and post on our discussion board is you're going to take just one vocabulary word and walk through the process and sketch out that 6-day plan. So thinking about what images and activities might you use to introduce the term, and then moving on to having students write it in their notebooks, and then the different activities that you're going to use. You know, how you're going to have them do the non-linguistic representation and have discussions, and then possibly a game or two that they might play with it. So post that on the discussion board for discussion. We're going to move on now into Dr. Anita Archer's lesson plan for vocabulary development. And basically, I'm going to walk through a PowerPoint that she would use to introduce vocabulary. And she really uses this for the direct instruction piece of building vocabulary. So this could be your part 1 in the Maranzano strategy if you chose. So the word they're doing is possession. And she puts this you know, we're going to provide a student-friendly definition of the term and give some synonyms. So she shows that it's a noun. She says if you're in possession of something, you have it because you've obtained it or because it belongs to you. Some synonyms, ownership and control. It's important to bring those other words in, as that's going to just expand their vocab. Then next, she finds a photo, an engaging photo for students, and provides a question. Are you in possession of any wristbands like these? Why? And then she also, and that helps them apply that definition in context, but always, always, always when we ask students to discuss, she's a big proponent of giving them a sentence stem to start with. So students should say, I am in possession of one of these wristbands. I am not in possession of one of these wristbands because, and then that way they know exactly what to say. The second piece is she provides this picture, and she said, why did the owner of the store name it possession? And you're going to begin that piece with the owner of the store named it possession because. So you can kind of see where this would feed into that step 5, having discussions with the application of these terms. So this type of PowerPoint could go many places in that 6-step lesson plan. And then we're going to do other forms of the root word and apply them in a smooth and coherent way. So possession being the noun, possess being the verb, possessing being the verb, possessor being the noun. Possessions of weapons of mass destruction is a big responsibility for governments. To possess such devices can be unsafe for our security. Groups who want to destroy our way of life dream about possessing this type of powerful weapon. The possessor of weapons of mass destruction must be extremely cautious. So you can see how they took and wrote a little paragraph applying that. That's the teacher doing that. Now, could that be an activity for students? Absolutely, but definitely needs to be modeled for a while, and then maybe some guided practice in small groups before they were able to do it independently. So you're going to take that same vocabulary from Activity 1 and create Anita Archer's version of that PowerPoint. And again, you could use that Anita Archer PowerPoint in one of the steps of your 6-step vocabulary process for Maranzano. So please keep that in mind. So we're down to next week. Next week we're doing reading comprehension. So chapters 9 and 10 in the old edition, new edition, those pages listed there. Nicole will be presenting the information in chapter 9. Sarah will be presenting the information in chapter 10. Make sure you post your things on the discussion board and then also reply and give feedback to at least 2 other students' postings. Have a great day.